Hello, I thought I would do a tutorial more on UI elements, just controlling UI and how we could manipulate the different various parts of UI in various ways. So if I have a blank scene, there's nothing here. Well, our little Playmaker friend here. We have an event system and just that. So I'm going to create, just to begin with, I'm going to create a canvas. And I'm going to say scale with screen size, right? You have different styles of render mode here. Just to kind of show you a little bit about that, since we're talking about UI things anyways, I am going to create for example, a terrain, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create say a capsule. I'm going to sit him there. Now say, for example, say you wanted a health bar and you wanted it world space. There's a few different ways to do this. I mean, you could convert the 3D world into the 2D world and display it on the main canvas, and it looks nice. But the other method is I can go over to, say, this guy and create a canvas of his own, because all UI elements have to be in a canvas. And I could say he's going to be world space. I don't know, maybe this is the camera. You don't actually have to fill that out. Let's not fill it out. Let's just pretend right now that we don't have nothing. And we're going to go, and I'm going to set this really small. As you can see, like the canvas, I mean, even with that, I mean, it's still freaking huge, right? So let's go 0.05 on the scale. And now I can take this thing, stick it up there, and maybe in this canvas you would have, oh, I don't know, maybe a health bar or something, right? So you could scale it down, something more like that. Get rid of the handle, get rid of the width of the handle, and that, and do, say, green for health, background, maybe a darker green, and now you'd have world space, like a world space health bar or something like that, right? And then from here, you would want, for example, we would want something, if you were going to use something like a health bar, right, you would want to get the main camera. We'll store them as a variable. We're going to tell the owner to look at the camera. Don't worry about vertical, every frame. So now, you take this camera and you bring it over, and you see down here in the actual game view, he's facing our little slider, right? But there's one little issue here, right? And if you haven't noticed it yet, it's you see he turns and faces him, but that slider's going this way. That's just not right, and that's due to how the canvases look and set up. It's kind of backwards. So anyways, the easiest fix on that, you have a canvas here, you're going to tell him to look at it. You just take this guy, you go to your rotation, and you can just do that. Now I take the camera, I bring him over here, align him with view. He's looking at them, and now the slider's going in the right direction. Right, so just to kind of give you an idea about that. So the canvas, let's say we have, well, let's cover a few different things. We have buttons, and I should go back to 2D so I can play with this. So we have buttons, and maybe what I am going to do is I'm going to create an empty. We'll call this stuff A, stuff B, and stuff C. And I'm going to, because I know we have an action for it, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put this stuff under here. So now we just have this thing called stuff. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few different tricks with this stuff. So stuff A, I'm going to stick over here, and I'm going to throw on a vertical layout group, and I can tell the children of this to take more or less these constraints. So let's say not height, but let's do width. So now if I say make a button, a UI button, he's going to sit in a certain spot, right? And I could adjust this guy, right? If he was like that, the button's going to be X big, right? So let's go, I'll say 200. And if I duplicate this button, we just get a whole bunch of things. Right, so we have a vertical layout group, and over here, let's make another one, stick them there, and I'm going to put a grid layout group. And in here I'm going to stick, we can even do buttons in this one too. Now here, it's a grid, so it creates a grid-like fashion. So I can now change these, for example, give them a bit of spacing. You can add padding to those, right? Maybe we don't want it to be that close to the top. We can move it down, so forth. And what else? We can put constraints on it. Fixed column row, we only want one column, or we can do that. Right, so it offers a fair bit of space to play. And over here, actually I'm going to add some buttons here anyways. UI button. Just stick them in like that. I'm going to deactivate these. And in this one, which we put in this one, let's give him a scroll view. Kind of another method. So a scroll view is a nice little way that you have your bars. It kind of sets it up. You have your viewport. You have this little guy called your content. Now this is a wonderful thing. If you can add all sorts of stuff. You could do the vertical layout group on your content. So now I can add, say, a UI button or whatever it is. If you want to use an image or something, that's fine too. Right? And let's say we're going to do that. And give a bit of spacing. Now if I take the button, as you can see, he comes down and they're still being made, but they're masked out. And if I hit play, you have this. Now it's not going all the way down, And that's because we would need to expand the content, right? And you can take this guy and you can take this all the way to the moon and back. Don't really matter. Right, so now I can just go and go and go and go. Okay, so that's kind of viewport things. So let's create a few things on how we would control and use some of these things in Unity with Playmaker. So we have a canvas here, and I'm gonna make an FSM on him. I'm gonna call him master, and I am going to create let's say a button. He can stay there, and I'm going to label this guy differently. I'm going to say open stuff A, and I'm going to create, what should we create next? We have buttons. How about a toggle? Stuff B. And what else? Let's create, I'll do those differently. Well, I don't know, maybe we'll do just another button for now. And then let's create a image, stick them here, and we're going to create, let's say a slider. Let's stick that slider by our image. Just going to stick them like that for now. Actually, that's kind of a good idea. Let's go like this. Now we can say show image. And then we can take one of these buttons. I'm just going to duplicate them over. Actually, I'm going to cut these widths down. They don't got to be perfect or anything. And then let's create, what else should we play with? We have sliders now. We can play with the scroll bar. That one's an interesting thing. And drop downs. Okay. And let's create an input field. Alright, so I'm going to go over to come on to 2D just briefly, and I'm going to create a cube, and he's going to sit right somewhere around there. And take the camera, and I'm going to tell the camera to look at this cube, and this cube I'm going to tag as player. So what I'm going to do now is on here, and it doesn't have to be here. I mean, you can make an empty game object. You can put the logic on these things. I'm just going to put it here so it's more localized for me. So let's give this cube a child text, which automatically produces the canvas, and I'm going to say world space, and we already know 0.05-ish. Zero all that out. take this text and I'm going to actually just squeeze it in there. So I'm going to scale that down to just like that. And I'm going to make it, I don't know, say a nice bright green and best fit. And I'm going to do that little thing where I'm going to take this and I'm going to spin it to 180. I'm going to deactivate him. I'm going to add an FSM. I'm going to do the same thing with the get camera. We're going to get the main camera and look at. And we're going to look at camera. Oop, every frame, yes. We don't care about vertical. Make sure to move this above. Okay. So I'm going to change this guy's name to set me and turn on. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say we have an input field, and we're going to say up in here we're going to make an event on input fields. We're going to say input field. We'll just call it that. Doesn't have to be that. This can be anything. So there's two ways of doing this. You could use these things here, and there's a bunch of different options to play with, no doubt. I'm not going to use those. Those work. There's nothing wrong with those. But on the input field itself, you have these two things. So on value change is anytime anything is typed into this thing. So if you're typing a name and your name is I don't know, say Joe, you know, this event will fire for the J, the O, and the E. Where the on and edit fires when you click away, or if you hit enter or something like that. You hit the submit, then this one fires. So this one happens on every character. This one happens only at the end. So for example, I'm going to use this guy. I'm just going to drag that guy in here, and then we're going to say send event, and the event is called input field. And on the input field, I am going to get that input field. We're going to store that text as input text. But I'm not going to have this every frame, right? Like I said, you could have this over in the start and have it every frame. You're constantly always getting it. This, I'm not going to bother with it, right? So now if I hit play and we have it like this, we should see we now have a text of H, fires off every letter. Okay, so that's how they work, and we're going to play with that some more. So there we have an input field. Ooh, okay, so I am going to now have, let's do it's going to do a button array, but when we have this many buttons, actually no, let's do this. So on this button, we're going to have this guy active. Okay, so you could try to run a bunch of logic to it, and that's fine. But on click event, I'm just going to plus that a few times, and I want this one game object set active true, and I want this one game object set active false, this one, game object, set active false. And if I go to, that's button 3 and button 2. So, okay, so button 2, we're going to literally do the exact same thing. And drag all 3 of those in. But since this is button 2, I want him false. I want him true. Him false. Then on this guy, which is the last button, obviously the same thing, but you know, and I imagine you've guessed it, we're going to leave the first 2 not active and this guy active. Okay, so there we have that. And if you're curious about these yellow lines, those are the navigation. So if I turn this button, hit this button here, those turn off. And all the navigation is where inputs go from the input system, horizontal, vertical, submit, cancel, on all this type of stuff. Right, they all have it. So if I, from here, hit horizontal, he goes over here. If from here, if I hit horizontal this way or this way, he'll go accordingly. If I hit down, apparently he's going to go over here. So this is a way that you can control inputs through this stuff. And I'll show you how to do that after as well. But you can see navigation automatic. You could tell it, you know, you can untick these things. This one has no things. You can say, okay, well, if you push up, you want to go to a certain one, you want to go down, you want to go to a certain one, so you can tell it, you can control it a bit, or totally. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so there's, I'm going to reorganize these buttons a bit. So we have a toggle, and if the toggle is true, then we can Google numbers. Enable? No. No, I'll tell you what, we won't do that one. We will go into here and we'll make an event for this guy. And we will call him toggle. And toggle will have, so on value changed, drag him in, Playmaker send event, toggle. So now here I can toggle and again, like there is special events you can have for all this stuff as well. You don't have to you don't have to do this. You could stick them all in here. This is, I'm just doing it this way to hopefully so it's maybe a little more clear. Okay, so what we're going to say is toggle is on and toggle is off. And if we were on, we want this guy to activate. Where's the normal activate? Activate game object. So we are going to actually just activate that slider. And then we're going to finish, go back, stick them underneath, copy, paste. If toggle is off, we'll deactivate them. Okay, so now on the slider, he's going to be turning on and off. We're going to get this value, and what I'm going to do with this guy is we are going to make an event called slider, and on the slider, on the value change of the slider, we're going to tell this guy to get data, or to send this event, and we're going to slider we're going to get that slider, and this slider value we are going to remap. And this is on the ecosystem if you don't have it. I love remap. So the slider is slider value. Now the slider value is right now 0 to 1. Now you could change that or use whole numbers as well. I'm just going to leave it as default. So base start is 0 and it goes to 1. So from 0 to 1. And I'm going to go 0 and I'm going to remap it to 360. And I'm not going to do that every frame. But I am going to move to the bottom a player variable. I'm going to rotate him on the remapped slider value. Self, it's not really going to matter. So we need to find game object. We need to find cube with a tag player, and we're going to store him as player. So now as we move this slider that appears when we have this toggle on, we should see our guy rotate. Okay, and we have, okay, let's do the drop bar next. So the drop down, you have these different options and you can use different sprites. We have option A, B, C, and you can add these till the cows come home. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to stick with the normal 3. And again, I am going to, in here, say drop down. And I'm going to go to this drop down, and on his value change, we are going to send the event drop down, and when he gets it, we are going to get that drop downs, and you can get all the different data. I just want, what do I want, the index or text? Let's use text. So drop down text, and then let's down here, let's do a string switch, and we're going to have the drop down text. We're going to have 3 switches. We're going to have, we'll say blue and red and green. Blue, red, green. So if we get blue, let's let's get a variable of this guy. We're going to do it this way just because. So we are going to get component on the player of the cube renderer, set property of said get component. We want to change the material color, and we're going to set the value to blue. Okay. Well, you know what? I don't need these transitions here. I don't know why I put them there. Alright, so I'm going to copy that and paste. Red, green. So red and green. Alright, so there's the drop down's going to do that. Okay, so let's use the screen. Okay, yeah, the input field. We didn't really finish that one off, other than just getting the field. So we're going to get this text, and then we are going to get child of the player, and the child's name is going to be turn on. It's untagged, and that's the turn on player thing. And I'm going to duplicate that. And of the turned on player, we're going to get a child called set me, and that could be as set me, and then we can UI text set text be set me can now be drop down, no, not the drop down text, input text. And we can, no, we're not going to activate that though, not in this one. So we have that, and I guess we can activate it. We don't have any other place to, I guess we don't even need it deactivated to start with. It doesn't really matter. So the other one is the scroll bar. So the scroll bar is a fair bit different, as it has you have the value change, but you have a value between 0 and 1. You have the size and the number of steps. So easiest way is if we go in and we look at it, if I now see it, it has these steps going through. If I bring that down, there's no steps. So, and the size, like if you make it 0.5, it's more or less, you're halfway, right? So now, if you wanted to, you could say there's 2 steps. And you're this way or you're that way, right? So you can go 0.25 and there's 4 steps. You now are going in quarters. Okay, so that's kind of how this little guy works. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make another event called scroll. And we're going to stick him over here. And we're going to go to this guy. And when he gets an event changed, he is going to send an event called scroll. So this guy now is scroll bar get value of this scroll bar. So now we have this value. So let's take that value and what should we do? We can remap it. Just for the fun of it, the scroll bar value from 0 to 1. Let's go -1 to 1. Remapped scroll bar value. And we don't need that every frame. And then let's translate. We're going to translate the player just because on his X, the remap scroll bar value space self every second per frame, and we're going to wait. Now, you normally wouldn't put this here at all like this. This would be a very weird setup. But, you know, just for demonstration. Different things you can do. So one of the other things is, say you wanted to control this stuff using your keyboard. Right? Because if I hit play, and I hit left and right, up and down, enter, like nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. So if I say go to these buttons, and let's just say our normal color is that if we're highlighted, we're a bright green. If we're pressed, we're a dark green. If we're selected, we can just be a green. Yeah, we'll call it like that. So you could, on start, UI set his interaction. Nope. Select. Get selected, deselect, update selected, set selected game object. There we go. So we need a variable. It's weird that it doesn't have that thing. So let's do a start. Oops. Start selected. This guy here. You can even put him here. So if I was to close our canvas and open it, let's say we want him to be our default button. And when we have this stuff turn on, we have all these buttons. I am going to do that exact same thing. And new list start. Sure. This guy. So this guy, he wants this one started. Okay. So now, if I open that up, that guy's green. And if I, well, okay, probably shouldn't touch the mouse when I'm doing that. So if I, well, let's turn him on first then. So he's highlighted. I'm not touching the mouse. I can now hit right, or I'm hitting D on the keyboard, or A and D, right? And I can go down, I can go all over the place. We're moving the slider, and you know, I can type of idea. So that's kind of how you would run controls, and the horizontal will work. So I mean, even if you were going to run a joystick or something like that, that's kind of how you would set that up. But yeah, so we have these buttons. Now, as you can see, they actually do, these things don't obviously do anything, but I can scroll. These buttons don't do anything, but we can turn those on and off. Well, turn them on, right? Obviously, we don't have a method to turn it off. We can show or hide. And I forgot to do this one, but as you see, we can turn the cube just by this. And we can have cube name. There we go. And as you see in this one before, he's going that way. He moves for a bit. And what else? We have option B. Oh, we're not getting a color change though. Why not? Because we never bothered changing the actual names. Blue, red, green. Okay, so let's go here. Blue, red, and green. Okay, now we go red, we want green, we want blue. Now you can type in whatever. We're moving them around. So there we have some UI elements and how we could move it. And then, like I said, this starting selected. So when you have something selected, so you need a starting point, then all of these arrows will work. The left, right, horizontal, and vertical, just from your normal inputs. All right, and your enter button, or I think A works on the Xbox controller as a submit. Then you can control all this stuff. So there we have a bunch of UI elements on how we control things. And these button things, I mean, that's, you know, we have this, right? Now, obviously, if I click it numerous times, it's not going to flip itself, right? If you wanted something like that, you would need, you know, a different system, like something like this, where you click a button and check a bool, and then, okay, if we're active and we're this one, turn off. But there is a whole bunch of elements and how you kind of link them up with just simple commands. And said I used the global transitions. I kind of like it. It's a personal preference, I guess, but you don't need to. There are events, right? You can use these ones as well. You can reset the focuses. You know, you can get button on click events right in here and just stay in one state. Okay, you clicked, go out, come back in, kind of idea. So there is a bunch of UI element stuff. Alright, we'll talk to you guys later.